Did Pete Carroll go back to USC? Because the USC Trojans have the number one overall class in this year's recruiting ranking in 2026. Joe, at 35 commits, Lincoln Riley and company get it done. What are your thoughts on the Trojans leading the charge and having the number one overall class in the country?
If anyone went back and listened to a lot of our old signing day episodes that we did, they'd notice that USC was often a team that we brought up as a loser. We would talk about them really underperforming for what their brand should be doing. One of the biggest qualms that we had, Blake, when we talked about USC, they were not doing an effective job of keeping a lot of guys in the state of California. A lot of Southern California guys. Yeah, they're coming from these big programs, these high school programs that are not far from USC in the Orange County. A lot of those guys were leaving. Like, this year was a huge step forward for Lincoln Riley. Chad Bowden coming in really took advantage of this year's class, finishing at the top of the Rivals industry rankings. I'm a big fan of Mark Bowman, who is a super, super gifted tight end, and I think that he reminds me a lot of Brock Bowers and could be really productive early on in his time with the Trojans. That's not the only player that they got. Luke Waffle's another five-star guy. Boobie Feaster's a fun name and also a talented receiver. 20 kids.
Saw him, by the way, up live and personal 2 years ago with Michigan starting quarterback and Bryce Underwood. Kid can really play.
Oh, was he in?
He was in the when LSU had like Harlem Berry, Boobie Feaster, and Bryce Underwood all in a room. This kid, Boobie Feaster, can really play. Like seeing him up close and personal. Long, rangy arms, got a long wingspan, can really climb the ladder. I saw him, like his elbow was above the goalpost when he like tried to dunk it. Like, this kid's got some serious range. Boobie Feaster that's right where I was going to start, but you can continue. I'm just saying, like, I've seen him up close and personal, and this kid can flat out fly for especially being – look, it says he's 6'1", by the way. Yeah.
You think he's taller than that?
I think he's a little bit taller than that, but a dude that can absolutely fly, too, in Boobie Feaster.
Only other thing I want to add before I throw it to you, 20 kids from the state of California of this gigantic class. The one thing that's a little bit of a caveat, and I'm not trying to knock USC because what they accomplished is impressive, they still only got one top 10 kid in the state of California, and that was Bowman. So a little bit of a knock there that we got to recognize that you finished with the number one class. It's tremendous, but I think that there's a little bit more that you have to do of keeping everybody in the state. There's still a chance that they get Chris Henry Jr., which I think would really cap off an amazing class.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a tough place to be. Like, they lost on Arrington. They lost on Wilder. Chris Henry hasn't signed yet. I don't really, they didn't really go the Ryder Lions way, right? Mm-hmm. They didn't really go in a direction, too, when it comes to some of these other guys. Oregon's going to get their fair share of that, too. So it's not like I'm not going to criticize them on that. But here's the big thing for me. Six players signed today, just signed. 6 players signed that are in the top 50 in recruits, Joe. 6. USC doesn't do that. Now, you can look at a lot of things and say a lot of things. Well, all of their kids signed, but I'm just saying 6 of the kids that signed are in the top 50. When have they been historically doing that? That's the point. Now, I think they're throwing what at the wall in reference to at what they're doing at receiver, at tight end. But here's the biggest thing for me. I look at their list, and this is a little bit different than what Lincoln Riley has done in the past, even at Oklahoma, for what it's worth. Wait, I see a top 200 player in the country in the interior offensive line. I see a top 150 guy at edge, another top 150 guy at edge. I see another top 150 guy along the defensive line. I see an offensive tackle inside the 150. I see another offensive tackle inside the 150. Oh, well, there goes Winfield. He's a top 50 player, and he's a defensive lineman. Pepe, okay, who's the number 40 ranked player and offensive tackle in the country, also for IMG. He commits to USC. Joe, they cleaned up on both lines of scrimmage, and they haven't historically been doing that. Here's the thing, and I've said this when you and I have broken down USC. What was my thing about USC? I was like, even if they go 9-3, Joe, even if like everybody says it's a bad year, oh, they weren't that great. Me and you don't believe that. What was their offensive line when this year versus other seasons? Boy, they seemed a lot more physical at the line of scrimmage and attack. And boy, they continue to dominate in recruiting. Look, Lincoln, good on USC for allowing Lincoln to reset here. And Lincoln reset some things. Got a new GM, got new staff, got new defensive guys. They got to do better at the top of California. I agree with you there. But you also got to remember the 2027 class. And I will leave it there with USC. They dominated, and they got a lot of top 200 players. Joe, you're talking about double-digit top 200 players. That's absolutely fantastic. Hats off to Lincoln Riley and USC for what they just pulled off.
I know we got a lot of classes that we want to be able to get to today, so not to linger too long. I think that you hit on the other part with this. There's two aspects that we had been critical of Lincoln Riley for them not effectively emphasizing, and it was the state of California. And I think it's kind of like when you're in a region where guys are very passionate about representing their home state, representing Southern California. If you're near Austin, guys are passionate about representing Austin. As you know, in Louisiana, guys are passionate about representing the state of Louisiana. Bringing in the guys that maybe aren't all the 5 stars, having a lot of 3 stars, a lot of 4 stars that are from the area, that stuff is just as important. But the other part that you brought up that I think is really key here, not only did they go big on big name recruits on the O-line and D-line, they got some big MFers, man. Pepe's a big dude. He's 6'7", 325 is what he says. Oh, come on, man.
I have a 6-year-old son at home. Every time you say that, I'm going to be doing this.
Okay, well, he is tall. I will not repeat his height, but they got some big kids, man. And I think for anyone who wants to play USC's not equipped to be physical enough to play in the Big Ten. We saw this year that they were more physical, and now we're starting to see them get the bodies to play to that physicality.
I think Boobie Feaster's the steal of the class.
I agree. It's a good point.
I think he's the steal of the class. I like Alston at running back too. You go into the state of Ohio and you get a top 5 player in the state. I mean, Joe, I look at Alston just before we wrap up here. I look at his offers for what it's worth, and everybody in the country offered him. Ohio State, look, not only in the state of Ohio did they get Alston, they went and got Elbert Hill too. So they went inside the state of Ohio, and we'll talk about Ohio in just a minute. Joe, they took the number 1 player out of the state of Ohio, and they took the number 5 player in the state of Ohio. So you want to beat, okay? You want to go in and beat some of the top teams in the Big Ten? Well, you got to go in their backyard and beat them in recruiting. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what they did when they needed to do it.